What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning to another video. Excuse any background noise. I'm walking around my neighborhood, so there's cars driving by, so on and so forth. Wanted to make this video because I've had a lot of people ask me, not technically on YouTube, through Reddit, forums, even my local cycling groups. They've asked me why I essentially sold my TCR for a new bike, what I kind of didn't like about it. So going to essentially make that video, or this video, to highlight some of the things. For background context, I did pick up a 2024 Giant TCR frame set. This was on December 2023, with the intention of building it up and having this bike for the next few years. Just ahead of time, I want to preface by saying that all these pros and cons about the TCR is my personal opinion. These are my personal experiences with the bike overall over the past 7-8 months that I own the bike. 7-8-9 months that I own the bike. Obviously your opinion may be different and other people's opinion may be similar or different, but wanted to note that ahead of time. All right, let's run through the cons. First of all, with the TCR, number one, road feel. I personally did not like the road feel of the TCR. I felt every bump in the road, so that led to some discomfort, which is con number two. I personally could not get comfortable on the bike after 1 to 2 hours or so. Every time I had to get off and stretch out my body, and I don't have that issue with the Merida Reacto. That was one thing I noticed right away with the comfort. Even though I did a lot of stretches, adjusted the bike to my specifications, just could not get it working the way I wanted to. Third con is the handling. The twitchiness of it was a little bit too much for me as I kept veering left and right. On group rides, I've noticed other people say that I would be moving side to side a lot, and that was due to the twitchiness of the TCR. I've tried a longer stem to make it a little more stable, but even then it was still extremely twitchy. And I don't know if this is just me or not, but riding without hands, I could not do that with the TCR. I can do that with any other bike. It just kept leaning one way or leaning the other. I've talked to a local bike shop about it. They said that's common on race bikes, but I thought that it was a little bit odd with that, and I don't know if it was just the way I set it up or things like that, but extremely twitchy bike. And that could be good for other people. It could be good for crit racing, it could be for road racing, but whatever it may be, for my personal use, it was not up to what I was looking for. Number four, limited stem choices with the OD2 sizing. So the Pro and Advanced SL, same thing with the Propel, have a 1 1/4 steer tube size. So you are limited to either Giant, Zip, Ritchie, and maybe another brand or two of stem choices. So you might have to pay a little more for one or get a little different sizing for the other ones, but depending on the degree. So that's one of the annoying things. If you do end up with this particular bike with the Pro and above frames, you are getting in 1 1/4 versus the traditional 1 1/8 steer tube size. Number five, the bike didn't give me the wow factor that about other people that I've asked about that own a TCR. So when you do pick up a new bike, whatever it may be, after test riding, you kind of get a feel right away of, oh, this is the bike for me. Before I bought the frame set, I've actually never tested a TCR. I kind of went off people's opinions, and most people say that this is like the best all-rounder bike that you can pick up for a beginner to a pro, whoever it may be. It fits the bill for a lot of people, and I've read online that people say it's a lot more comfortable than certain brands, at least compared to some of the bikes that I've owned previously. So I said, why not? Let's give it a shot. The geometry looked right based on the numbers that I found on Giant's website. When I received the bike after riding it for maybe a couple weeks, the wow factor just disappeared. I did not feel like I had to ride the bike all the time. I felt like every time I hop back on the Merida Reacto, I'm like, wow, this bike is great. I really enjoyed that bike a lot, and it's one of my favorite bikes I've owned. So this one, I would constantly switch out back and forth versus kind of like, oh, I have to pick up this bike. So didn't give me that wow factor, and I'm hoping that so far with my new Tarmac SL8, which does have the wow factor for me, I really enjoy riding the bike. I really want to go out with it all the time. So I hope that stays true to what it is, at least for the next couple years. All right, diving into the Pro. First of all, I do want to note that the TCR is a great overall bike. A lot of the features and capabilities that it does offer will be great for some people, and great for not so great for others, such as myself. But I still would recommend the TCR to someone. Of course, having a test ride first, understanding how the bike feels, and maybe to see if it's right for them before actually purchasing it. In my particular case, I went the opposite route of just kind of researching online, buying it, and the only sucky thing was a lot of my local bike shops didn't carry a TCR in my size. So it'd be like a size 54, size 61, and that wouldn't be a good judgment of me picking up the bike. Went with, as I mentioned, other people's opinions, whatever I found online, and went through that route. Okay, so one of the pros, responsiveness. So given that it is a really stiff bike, although it may be uncomfortable for me, I think one of the best things about the TCR is that you get all the power transfer. Whenever you're pushing the bike, it will go. You're sprinting up a hill or climbing up a hill, the bike moves with you. Sprinting on a flats against other people, the bike will move. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about the TCR and its stiffness. Its ability as an all-rounder to do its thing, which is be good at all things, but maybe not be the best as a propel on a flats, where you will get that extra little bit of speed with a little bit of less wattage use. Another pro and this is kind of Giant as a whole, is the value for the cost and weight is what's given to you. So this 2024 Giant TCR that I picked up was retailed at $2,100, given a size 58 rate, almost 1,000 grams. If you are looking at a mid-tier bike at other brands such as like Trek, Cannondale, Scott, Specialized, whatever out there, you might have to pay a little more. The bike could weigh a little less, but the cost to weight ratio may not be as good as what Giant offers. And of course, I love that Giant gives you a lifetime warranty. Their warranty is great. Even if you crash it within like the first year or two, I believe they help you replace it depending on the circumstances at hand. When I was looking at bikes at the time, I wanted something that first of all wouldn't be too crazy expensive, and then be lighter than most typical bikes. So in this case, I wanted an all-rounder that could do well on climbs and then obviously not break the bank. So with this in mind, I looked at Cannondale, I looked at, like I said, Specialized, I even looked at Trek. And if you're looking at those brands, you'll see the comparison between like a Super 6 Evo and a Monda. I don't know if they make the Monda anymore, maybe like a Madone. But the price difference was at least 20%, at least from the research that I consisted. So if you want something similar, some people might not like the Giant name. I think it's fine with me. Factors take into account when you're building a bike, and what you get out of a TCR is really great. So if you are looking to build one up that does essentially what every other bike does, maybe you might not have the name, maybe it's a little bit of different weight, or maybe a different frame shape, but besides that, you are usually getting a better bang for your buck when you do go with Giant. So my third pro or fourth was essentially with the 2024 models. It still had external cable routing, and that's one of the best things that I enjoyed as a self mechanic, do it all myself, put it all myself. It was a lot easier to put together than routing everything through the steer tube, the stem, the handlebars. I could just route the cables through the frame, through its pre-drilled holes, pull it all out, and then put it all together, and it's very simple. In addition to that, you have the ability to pack it a lot more easily if you're going to travel somewhere, put it in a bag or bike box. You don't have to fiddle with the integrated stem and handlebar setup, and that's what I really appreciate about this bike. So if I ever had to go anywhere, if I had to make changes to my fit, it was very, very easy to do in a matter of seconds or like a minute or two, versus an integrated setup where you might have to unscrew a piece here and there and then fiddle it around to actually get to what you want to do. I know the 2025 models are integrated now, sadly, but if I'm not mistaken, the cables can still route through under the stem. So that is a plus, unless you are going through with a one-piece handlebar setup. That's one of the great things about having an older TCR or slightly older bike. If you have external cables, yeah, you lose a little bit of wattage, which is not really a big deal, unless you're a pro maybe, but you are able to make changes and build a bike a lot easier. And then my last pro is the TCR is one of the better all-rounder bikes in my opinion. Obviously I can't 100% say that against a Super 6 Evo, a Madone, a Monda, because I've never owned those. I've just test ridden them. But as an owner of a decent amount of time for a TCR, going against other people that in my group rides or even like a local road race, whatever it may be. Some people carrying like an Factor Ostra Vam, a Super 6 Evo, a Propel. With the TCR itself, I know at the end of the day, you as the engine are the one that controls how well you do it. But compared to other bikes that I've owned, I think the TCR is better than the Skyadic RC. Obviously my Giant Contend AR1 being an aluminum all-rounder bike, I think this TCR really does a great job of being an all-rounder. If you need it to climb, it will do it. If you need it to hold speed, it will do it. It might not be the best at each of these categories compared to like a Specialized Athos on a climb where it's extremely lightweight, or a Giant Propel where it's strictly an aero bike. This TCR really does it all, and that's what I really appreciate about it. So whenever I rode with people, I didn't have to put in a lot more effort just to keep up. Although if you're going on a descent or on a flat, it might be great to use a little bit less energy compared to other bikes that are out there. But it does what it needs to do, especially if you're looking for an all-rounder bike or just one bike to kind of rule them all. The TCR does it pretty well. All right, so with that in mind, these are the pros and cons of the TCR. My experience over a 7 to 9 month period. I did have one more issue with it, which was not the bike itself, but with Shimano Di2, 105 Di2 specifically. I had to replace parts, had to warranty it. Did not really enjoy my overall experience with it. I do love Shimano for its brakes. It has a really great bite, and then the shifting is a lot smoother than SRAM. But the reason I went for SRAM is because I just had too many issues with the 105 Di2 system. I had to warranty it. The shifter, no matter how I adjusted the front derailleur, I even had a bike shop look at it, it still dropped the chain. Sometimes it would be finicky with shifting. And then I had a leaky brake caliper, which I replaced. So initially when I did a brake bleed, it was still getting really mushy. And then I found out that my rear caliper was actually leaking. Bike shop helped me with that. They did another brake bleed to ensure that it was just not my user error, and they confirmed that it wasn't, so I ended up having to replace the rear caliper. So all these little things kind of added up to me not really enjoying the 105 Di2 system. But yeah, besides that, again, mentioned those are the pros and cons of the TCR. If anyone has questions about the bike as a whole or something that I didn't mention, please comment down below. At the end of the day, I was able to get most of my money back, so it wasn't really a big loss at all. I was happy to use that funding to move on to the Tarmac SL8, which I'll make a video of how I personally feel about the bike so far. Have about 300 miles on that bike. Enjoy it every time I go out there. It still has that wow factor for me. No issues with SRAM so far. Brake is a little bit different with modulation, but I think I actually prefer that over the Shimano one right now. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. Hopefully give you some insight on my personal opinion on the TCR and whether it may make a decision for you to move on to a TCR or not, or if it's something you might use as a consideration to go to another bike. But thank you for tuning into this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.